Hello! Let's continue our Sudoku adventure with Yin Yang Adventure by DJV. So this is another pencil puzzle hybrid. This time it's a hybrid between 6x6 Sudoku and the Yin Yang hybrid. So let's go over the rules. So we do have normal 6x6 Sudoku rules, and we have standard regions today. So in every row, every column, and every 2x3 box, we're placing the digits 1 to 6 exactly once each. Also, before we go over Yin Yang, we do have killer cages, but they are special. The gist of them is that there's these cages in the grid, and digits can't repeat within these cages. Even normal Sudoku rules would allow it. So I can't put a 1 here and a 1 here because that would repeat in the cage. Additionally, other than a rule that we're going to go over in a second, in general, you sum up the digits in the cage and they sum to the value in the top left. So these three would sum to 12 with a star next to that, which I'll go over right now. So on top of this grid, we're also going to be shading cells using yin yang rules. And so what does shading cells mean? Well, I'm going to use traditional colors here and say that a gray cell is shaded and a cell that's not gray is unshaded. But we're going to use green to represent a cell that is guaranteed unshaded. So by the end of this, we're going to have some number of shaded cells, and we're going to have some number of unshaded cells that we're going to have marked in green. Now, this is not a valid yin-yang for reasons we'll go over in a minute, but that's essentially what we're going to be doing. We're shading cells, and we're marking cells as definitely not shaded. And so we need to finish all the numbers in the grid, and we need to finish all the shading, and they're going to interact in a certain way. But let's go over the rest of the shading rules. First of all of the shaded cells and all of the unshaded cells must be orthogonally connected. We have two groups of orthogonally connected blobs, right? One of them is going to be shaded and one's going to be unshaded. So what I can't do is have like a group of shaded cells here and surround them with unshaded cells, because assuming those aren't the only shaded cells in the grid, I might have shaded cells over here and these cannot orthogonally connect anymore. Even if they were like diagonally connected like this, that's not enough. They need to be orthogonally connected, which means they share an edge. So this is going to have to get out in some way. So that's one of the rules. But this also breaks yin-yang rules, because for any 2x2 group of cells, like this, if you take any 2x2 group of cells, it cannot be entirely shaded or entirely unshaded. So this breaks the rule. So one of these would have to be unshaded, for example. All right. And those are the yin-yang rules, but how do they interact? Well, any shaded digits in a cell, like this one, for example, don't contribute to the sum. So if I have a 6 here, then these two would still need to add to 12, which is actually not possible. But that would be how this cage would work if this was shaded, right? The 6 doesn't count towards the sum if it's shaded. So basically, only the ones that you've marked green as unshaded are going to count towards the sum. That's how this one cage is possible, for example. You probably noticed that. So those are all the rules. If you'd like to just go just on the basic rules of yin-yang, feel free to give this a try yourself now. But I am going to go over a couple immersive properties of yin-yang just to maybe help you out. I don't know if these are going to be used in this puzzle or not, but it's always good to point that out. So the first property of yin-yang that may not be immediately obvious is we cannot form a checkerboard pattern. And the reason for that is these are going to have to connect to each other, and these are going to have to connect to each other orthogonally. So no matter how we decide to connect this green to this green, even if we take some circuitous route, we're going to end up enveloping one of the checkerboard sides, and it's not going to be able to get out. It's not going to be able to connect to this one. You can try it yourself, no matter what we do, or we're going to connect these, and that's going to isolate one of the greens. So you can't make a checkerboard. It's not technically in the rules, but the connectivity rule forces that. It's the double connectivity. The other thing is what we can't do is around the outside of a grid, we can only have one changeover in, like this doesn't work. We can only have one change between shaded and unshaded around the border of our grid. And the reason for that is I need to connect this part to this part, and I need to connect this part to this part, and they're going to end up crossing each other in some way. So like, no matter how I decide to connect this, I'm going to create some region that can't connect to the other in the unshaded, or no matter how I connect the shaded one, the unshaded ones, the shaded regions will form, will not be able to connect to each other. So we're going to have basically two borders between the shadeds and unshadeds around the perimeter. So those are two things that yin yang solvers are very familiar with. It is true in every yin yang, even though it's not listed in the rules. So I figured I'd give those tips right up front, just in case you want those. All right, so now definitely give the puzzle a try yourself if you haven't, and the link's in the description. And I'm going to get started right now. All right, so clearly we have a 1 in here, which is unshaded, and then we have a shaded cell in here. So maybe we can use the border rule right away. I don't know if we need to, but there's a border here, right? There's a border between shaded and unshaded right here, which means we only need to locate one more border. That's going to be here. So one of these two is a 2, right? Because we can't add to 2 in 2 cells, and then there's going to be a shaded and unshaded here. So these are our two borders, right? There's going to be basically all of these are going to be the same color. They're either going to be all unshaded or they're going to be all shaded. And the reason I know that is because we have a divide. I'm going to mark that here. We have a divide here and we have a divide here. And I could even mark it like this if I want, where this is going to divide shaded and unshaded, and this is going to divide shaded and unshaded. And I don't know whether these are, actually I do know now, but either these are all shaded or these are all unshaded. Now, what would happen if these were all shaded? Well, there's an issue with this 11 cage. This 11 cage isn't going to work because both of the digits are ignored in the sum, right? Every cage needs an unshaded in it. In fact, this cage needs 2 unshadeds in it. So we might as well mark that. We might as well mark the 12 cage also needs all. Well, let's finish this first. So that just means these are all unshaded and these are all shaded. We just have a bunch of shaded cells now. We actually know where the 1 and 2 are because the shaded cells do not contribute to the sum. Just double checking that I didn't get that backwards. It doesn't seem like I did. We need to add to 11, which is a 5, 6 pair. And so then these are going to be 3, 4. And we know the order. So we actually have digits now. I'm going to say this 12 cage here needs to be all unshaded because I think we saw in the example, if you shade a cell, the other 2 cells need to add to 12, but 11 is the maximum. So these are all 3 unshaded. Can't make a 2 by 2 of unshaded cells, so this has to be shaded. And it's got to get out because it's going to need to connect to all the other unshaded cells. Sorry, I keep saying it backwards. This shaded one needs to get out because it needs to connect to the other shaded cells. And so now this has to be a 6 and it has to be unshaded so that this cage actually has a sum in it. This still has to get out. It has only one direction to go, so that's going to be shaded. That leaves just this to be a 3. These are kind of no, these are all connected so far, so I actually don't have to race them. But this one does need to get out. I was going to say that this is going to race and come out as well, but it actually doesn't have to. Okay. So what else do we want to do here? 10 and 2, we need both of them to add to 10, and it has to be 4, 6. That means there's a 6 up here, and this 6 tells us where it is. Let's see. So we know we also need a 3 down here. That's going to go here. And then this is going to be a pair. I don't know if it's resolved or not. It's 2, 5. Doesn't look resolved. But this is also 2, 5. Whoops, 2, 5. So this is either going to add to 5, which isn't enough, or it's going to add to 8, which is enough. So there we go. So now these add to 8. This is going to be, to get to 12, it's going to be a 4. I guess I could just do more Sudoku here. So these 3 digits, we need a 1, 2, and 5. The 2 goes here. We get the 1 and the 5 here. Up here, we need the 1 and the 5 as well. Okay, so I'm probably missing something with the shading that's obvious. Yeah, here. We can't make a 2 by 2 of unshaded, right? So this has to be shaded. This 2 by 2 here. These are all connected still. This still needs to connect up somewhere, but it's got lots of options. So I wonder if the 11 cage is the key here. Let's do more Sudoku. Yeah, these are finishable. This is a 1 and this is a 4. So let's just pencil in what we've got here. This needs to be 3, 6, 5. That's not a 3. This needs to be 1, 2, 4. That's not a 2. So these 3 cells need to add to 11, and these max out at 6. So this has to be 5 or 6, and it can't be a 6. Oh. Yeah, it can't be 6 as a 6 in the row. So these need to be maxed out in order to reach 11. This has to be 5, and this has to be a 2-4 pair in order to get to 11. So this is a 1. This is 1 and 5. These all have to be unshaded, or we're not gonna reach our sum. And this shaded segment needs to connect to all the others, so that's shaded, and that's our shading. These are all orthogonally connected. These are all orthogonally connected, and we don't have any 2x2s of all shaded or all unshaded. Very nice. So we didn't have to use the rule for checkerboard, unless it came up and I ignored it. But it does seem like we did need to use the border rule, so I'm glad I went over that. Again, I didn't know what would be used in this puzzle before we started, so I just went over the standard, intro deductions in all yin-yangs that are quite often used, so I'm glad I did. All right, cool. Well, it didn't take us very long. I think that was a pretty straightforward yin-yang if you know the border rule. I'm curious if you went into this not knowing the border rule, if you were able to make progress. I think you probably could have. I think it's easier knowing the border rule, but like you would know that this 12 has to be all unshaded. For example, you know this 11 needs to be all unshaded, for example. I think you can still make progress on it, even if you aren't 100% familiar with the rule set. So let me know how you did on that. And of course, if you enjoyed this content, then why not leave a like, subscribe, and a kind comment below.